Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? We have more Ninjago coming your way, and I can't wait to get into this because the Ninjago stuff is absolutely incredible. This Evo Wave type stuff, last year was kind of like, I don't really know that I like this, but it has gotten better. It doesn't feel so much kind of pieced together. It feels like it was kind of refined throughout this wave. So I am a massive fan of some of these sets that we're going to talk about today. And we've got 3 of them. So let's go ahead and start off with the first one because it's the smallest of them and it is kind of different. I think some people are going to be like, you know what? I'm really not that interested in this, but it is nice in its own right. So first up, we have the Creative Ninja Brick Box 71787. And this thing has 530 pieces and it retails for $60 and 60 euros. Now, the cool thing about this is you have a bunch of different things that you can build. Set pieces are a huge thing for a lot of people. You kind of have your dojo, your training dojo that is going on here. Some really cute stuff that is going on as far as the Ninjago wave goes. It's just meant to be a lot of fun, unique and enjoyable and just, different to its own right. If you've ever built a creative box before, you know there's a bunch of different things that can be built in there, and it's actually not a horrible price point. It's slightly a little high. Give me $5 off, 10 I'll definitely take, but for $5 off, you're getting something a little bit better. So I'm going to try and go through everything the best that I can here because there are a bunch of little pieces and a lot of them kind of, continue on with one another. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Nia's little motorcycle that she has. It's a small little build motorcycle. It's nothing like we talked about in the last episode. It's nothing like that. But you do get Nia's little motorcycle. Nia is identical to the last 2 Nias that we have talked about. Very simple there. So I'm not going to go ahead and go deeper into that because you've already heard about the Nia already. So then we move on to Jay's little vehicle here. It is a nice little kind of hot rod style vehicle that he has, his little red car here. You have 2 stud shooters that come in the front of this, which I am a big fan of. I do like that. You have this big old intake engine scoop that is going on in the front of the car just behind those stud shooters. And then as you move towards the rear, you have your steering wheel. You kind of have your little cockpit. Again, this almost like this Formula-esque type car with your open wheels and stuff. Down the side, you have a sloped vent piece. I do like that. And another slope piece in that lighter orange color, that flamish orange color. I love the way that is done. Absolutely gorgeous. You do have swords that are on the side, which makes this thing look a little bit more menacing other than just a car. I'll be honest, if we got a few of these when I was a kid, I would have been playing with the crap out of these things because they're that perfect size to be able to play. They don't feel overly large in the hand. Well, they're not overly large in the hand, but they're very swooshable and able to be played with quite well. So one thing that I did want to mention before we continue to the rear of this thing, the wheels in the front are smaller than the wheels in the back. So it gives you that forward rake a little bit, plus along with the front bumper that's kind of, it's meant to be kind of like this, like I said, like a formula car where it's almost got that nose closer to the ground. But moving on to the rear, you have 6 cylinders that are exhaust pipes that are sticking out the side. Really love the way that is done. And a nice little slope that heads to the rear where your rear wing is hanging out there. Again, Formula-esque style car, open wheel car. I like the way that is done. And then you have your exhaust port, I guess, kind of in the back with that big old round tire-esque piece that we have seen so many times. It's almost kind of redundant at this point, but it's a nice way to finish out the car. So that is your two vehicles that you get. Oh, and Kai, identical minifigure that we've talked about before with the flame printing on the chest. So I'm not going to go big into that. If you don't know what I'm referring to, go back and listen to episode 291 and find out exactly more of the details there. So let's talk about some of the set pieces that we get. We get some smaller set pieces, and then we get a few larger. One of them is a weapons rack that has a wrench and kind of this mallet, a black mallet. Both of them are in black, by the way. And then you also get this flame type little set build where there's flames sticking out and there's little levels that you're jumping on there, the 2x2 round tiles. Maybe the ninjas are practicing, danger, like I've got to avoid the fire and such. You do get two of those. They are different levels. They're varied levels between the two of them. So that is nice as well. And then two of the other things that you get are weapons racks. You get varied weapons, you get spears, you get swords, you get my favorite weapon here, not the sai, because you do get your sai in here as well, but you get this dark brown bar here, and you got this little hilt piece, and then there are two gold talon pieces, claw pieces, the smaller ones, super smaller ones, that are sticking out the side. It takes me back to a Ninjago wave of season 9 where we had seen a lot of that for weaponry. So I did like that. That was really nice. I thought that was really quite enjoyable just to get something like that. So some more set pieces that we need to talk about. You have your dojo dummy bags, punching bags, sword bags, whatever you want to call them, that are here. They are hanging by chains. I love it. So you have a central build that goes straight upward, and then you have kind of little bar pieces. We've seen them as more so as flag poles, but they stick out the side, and then your chains attached to the end of them with these barrels being able to be, hang from. My favorite thing about this is it does spin, but I love the texture of the little bags that you are attacking and stuff like that, because they are the 2x2 round bricks that have the textured lines down the side. So instead of just doing a smooth brick, they chose to do the textured, which I love because, again, it just looks slightly different than some of the other stuff. So what we have here next coming up is you have your little kind of like this dummy warrior that you can use to practice attacking on. The golden hat, the little round hat that we've talked about in red, you get it in gold here. This little thing is it's supposed to be like a representation of a minifig of a bad guy to a certain degree, and it's got these little clips for arms. It's got a golden sword and golden sai, and you just practice beating up on that poor little guy. But it's nice. You've got this little training dojo. It just works really well. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the building style set pieces here. Some of them are really well. They're all really well done. I love the way they are done here. On here, you have one of them where you have your giant anvil with your giant mallet that you are casting weapons. You have the upright pieces, the column pieces, those solid column pieces here. And then the nice adornment of the roof with the golden 1x1 round plates on the end, but a lot of sloping tiling that was going on here. I love the way this was done. It's a really cute little roof section build, and you see that with the other roof sections on the other two buildings that we'll talk about here momentarily. So you do have a bucket here or a barrel here that has some other weapons in it, some shurikens and stuff like that. And I love that this giant golden sword is being, beaten into whatever. It's being cast here. I really like the way that is done. So then we also have the Evo style tile that is hanging on the front of this, where you have the giant hammer in white and green here on that red tile. So that is nice. You get the 2x2 round tile that has the dragon on it as well, the dragon print on it. So that is fun to enjoy. Just because, it's again, you want to get in that mindset of Ninjago, and right there you go. So the other small building that we have here, now these are adjacent to the main building or however you really want to set them up. That is completely up to you. Roof style is exactly the same. It is pretty much the identical roof. It's very easy to do, but it does look really sharp. One of my favorite things, holding this in my hand is just the roof alone with those columns coming up to it. The colors are just perfect. That forest green color for the roofs it knocked it out of the park. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous decision from the design team's part. I love it. So what you have over here is you kind of have your, if you will, like a tea bar that you've got going on. You have some cups that are in here. You've got your tea, and it's just really nice to have something different, just another set piece to be able to go get into the play function idea of play. That is what Ninjago. That is what Lego is going after. And this is probably not so much a set for adults. If you're a Ninjago fan, you are most definitely going to pick this up because of two of the minifigs that are exclusive to this, which you most definitely are going to want. So we move on to the final set piece that you have here. And well, it is a bigger building. It is the central building. It is more so of the dojo, the main focal point here, but you get golden frogs. Who doesn't love golden frogs? I love the frogs that are sticking out on the top, which we'll get to in a moment. But you're essentially just building on a few plates on the bottom. You have golden sides that are sticking out of the ground on the front of this building as you enter into the dojo. I love the gold stuff. Sometimes it's an overkill. I think it was okay here. I think it turned out really sharp. I think it turned out really, really well. So you have columns that are going upright. These are not the same columns. These columns are the ones that can kind of clip into place. And then you have some 2x3 tiles, one on each side, that are hanging down. They've got some cross swords in here. You've got one of the ninjas logos that are in here. I can't quite remember who it is. I'm pretty sure it's not Woo's. However, that's what you've got there. Some other kind of decorative writing on there as well. So as you just step a little bit further in, you have this kind of little balcony style idea on each side. With the balcony type pieces, those 1x4 balcony type pieces that have the square in the middle and then a semi-square on the edges, because obviously it's only so wide, but it turns out really nice to have those. You also have those on the other two builds as well. And you also have one of those pieces up in the top on the second floor of this build. You could call it a second floor. There's really not much to it though. Anyway, moving up to the second floor, we have some more of those solid column pieces in that darker brown. And then you have your roof that, again, that sloped roof, that upward sloped roof to get that ornamental style. And then you have your two golden frogs. You also have your 2x2 round tile that has that dragon on there as well, which is always nice to have. It's always nice to have those extra if you choose to break this down in the future and, enjoy it that way. Now, one thing I did forget on the bottom floor, you do have windows here. If it's something that it just adds a depth to it. It doesn't really do much as far as there's no functionality. It's just essentially there for your play, your enjoyment and stuff like that. So, I can't hate on it. It works fine. It looks cute. It's just something else to add into the build. So let's go ahead and talk minifigs here because minifigs are super important. We'll start with, we already did Nia and Kai, excuse me. Somebody's going to kill me for saying that. But what we do have is your Bone Warrior here. We have seen this Bone Warrior before. Red hat, all the chains that are hanging down in the front and on the rear. And then he's got that axe style weapon and the axe tomahawk style weapon. You do have 3 minifigs here that are only in this set. You have your young apprentice, your male and your female apprentice as they are labeled. One of them has their chain kind of with the hilt pieces. I don't know if that's supposed to be like a younger Jay because that's kind of his weapon. I like the way that is done. I love the print on this. You have a white gi that has some writing on it. I'm assuming that's kind of supposed to be like recruit or person in training or something like that. Apprentice. I don't know. But each of these two characters has the exact same print, the exact same torso, the exact same legs. The only difference is their hair. We have spiky hair versus the big old fat bun with the black hairpiece on your female apprentice. She is carrying a sword. It is not a golden sword, so I don't know. Maybe she hasn't attained yet. You know, she hasn't reached that point. She's just got a standard sword. I don't know. But these two are exclusive to this set, which is highly important for completionists of Ninjago. So then we move on to Master Wu. Master Wu comes with his standard giant beard that is hanging down his face. You know, we're so used to Master Wu's face. I love it. He only has the one, by the way, and then that ponytail that hangs down in the back, that print. It comes with his standard kind of hat that Master Wu always wears with that little point on the top. And then he comes with his staff. His printing is really nice. It's not like a golden Wu, which I appreciate. He's got his old man style, very wise ninja individual robe that he is carrying, or not carrying, but that he is adorning here, and just kind of this rustic kind of look for Master Wu, which I greatly appreciate. I think it turns out really, really well. So this set I think is pretty darn good price. Some people are going to say it's a little pricey, but I think for what you're getting, I think there's a lot here. You get a plethora of minifigs as well, which is always important. You always need those extra minifigs. So that is super important to keep in mind, especially, like I said, if you're a completionist. But anyway, that is that set. We need to move on to the next one here, which I am a giant fan of, not just because it's a mech, because it's a different twist to a mech. So this one is Jay's Titan mech. We've seen Titan mechs before. This is not the first time, but it is a little bit smaller. 71785 is the set number. It has 794 pieces, retails for $80, 80 euros. Now, the great thing about this is you get a bunch of bad guys, you get a bunch of good guys, and then you get the giant mech. So let's go ahead and talk about the mech, because that is the focal point. That is the biggest thing that, you know, you are paying for here. So the interesting thing about this mech is it is tall, and it is much more slender than many other mechs that you have seen, that you have built, that I have built. This does not compare anywhere to the giant Monkey Kid mech, which we talked about a few episodes ago. This thing is completely different. It is not near the chunk value, but it has a lot going on. So let's go ahead and start at the top. The first thing that you notice is you have a cockpit that, while it can fold down, kind of move about, it is very, 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 very different, very unique in its own right. And, you know, getting your minifig in is super simple. By the way, this thing does not fold down a ton, but it folds down enough. So your minifig, again, stands in here, and you have this kind of like little console. It's a trans slope that is in here. But there's no sticker on it, which is kind of weird. I was expecting something in there, but there is not. Then you have this triangular sloped brick that you have in the front of that. But the cool thing about this is for the cockpit, you have a head. We've seen this before, but it's been a while. But you have a head that is on a clip, and then on a separate clip, it's two parts here, two different clips. But the head is brick built, where you have a golden piece that sticks like in the top of the helmets, like we've talked about with some of the bad guys with the bone piece there. But the head can swivel just ever so slightly, not a lot, but it goes upward and down. It is on a ball joint, so that is nice to be able to get. But I love the idea of the mech here. You have a trans yellow piece in here that almost kind of looks like it's a single eye. I don't think it's necessarily the light. But here's my favorite part about this thing. So you get a ton of these 1x2 rounded bricks, Technic bricks that have the 2 holes in the middle. And they are really not doing anything other than giving you texture and kind of that kind of stuff. But you have these long ribbed tubes that are going from the back of the head here the whole way down. And then you use those Technic bricks to, split the 2 tubes. You have one that goes down one side and one that goes down the other. And it's gorgeous because you have this flex that is to it that I honestly would not have expected. And I just love the way that it's done. It is so cool looking. So when you get this thing into a mech or into a pose, then you add that onto it. It's just kind of cool looking. So then we move on to the shoulders. The shoulders, you got these giant bolt blasters. And I'm not talking about the skinny little bolts. I'm talking about the ones that have the giant rubber tips on the end. You do have these things. They are posable because they're on a ball joint. You can put these things upwards. You can kind of tilt them quite far to the side. You can tilt them down. You can actually tilt them 100 degrees. You can tilt them the whole way to the rear as well. You also have these unique little, and I just had one fall off, but you do have these unique little, they're not sword pieces, but they are kind of these little, just different, they're almost like fins that are sticking up. You have one that sticks up directly upward, and then you have one that sticks out to the side. It adds a little bit of a texture, a little bit of more of a ferocity to it, but I do like the way those are done. So you have these little bolt blasters that are on each side of the shoulders, which are kind of cool looking. They're so large for a brick belt thing. They're actually really big. So then we get to the shoulders. The shoulders can rotate. They are on a rotating joint that clicks into place. You have the joint that lets the arm come out to the side as well. Those are on click joints. And then you move a little bit further down your tricep area, bicep area, if you will. Kind of a smaller build. Uses some Nexonite shields, one on each side, and those are stickers. You have Jay's icon emblem that is there. And then you move down to the big old ball joint that they have here for the elbow. So you get some better movement than just like a click joint. I'm a big fan of these, by the way. And then you have these pieces for the forearm / back end of the elbow that are nicely tapered with some slopes the way these are done. More stickers on your Nexonite shield here, roughly around the wrist. And then you have these other blue and white stickers that are used towards the outside rear end of the forearm, which are really nice to have. Just more decoration. So then we get down to the hips and such. Now, this thing has a rearward sitting position. Think about it if you are going to go sit into a chair. You kind of lower your weight, you lower your butt, you lower your hips, and you kind of have that flex where your butt is dropping and your legs are kind of moving forward, if that makes any sense, at your hip joint. That is how this is locked into position, that it is not moving. So the upper part of the body is actually sitting further backwards than what the legs are, which is a kind of a unique way of doing things. Honestly, I was really surprised by that. So then we get to the hips, like I said, same kind of joint that we have seen at the shoulder. It does allow you to, we forgot to talk about the wrists. I'll come back to them here in a second. But you get to splay these things out ever so slightly, but you can rotate the legs forward and backwards quite a bit to be able to get some really nice poses. This almost reminds me of Pacific Rim, those giant mech style machines there. Very much the Jaegers. It reminds me of those. Anyway, so you have some textured pieces that are down here on the sides covering those joints, which I really like. You have a sticker that is here on the thigh. The knee joint actually bends. I know, you're so shocked, right? There's a dual ball joint on each side, which is absolutely gorgeous in the way that it is done. The little kind of kneecap / knee pad does move. So if you get it in a certain position where you don't want to see that naked, nasty inside of the knee, you can flip that upward. If not, it kind of does look ugly. So just below where the knee joint is, you have this big giant built up knee sticker on the outside again, but it is really sharply done. I really love the way the knees are done here. Then you move down kind of like this chicken leg that you got going on, and then you move down to the foot. The foot is absolutely, in comparison to the last Monkey Kid mecha we talked about, it is not near as big, but it is a pretty massive foot that you have going on here. It can swivel inward and outward, but it has no flex forward and backward. It has just enough to so that it's not locked into place. You do have 2 orange rubber feet that are on the back of this thing on the bottom, so that it does not slip, it does not slide. Your front of the foot has some nice decoration as well, kind of like a hood scoop piece that they have going on here. Really, really nice stuff. But again, you can get this thing into a bunch of different poses. You can get this thing into a running pose. You can get it into more of a static pose if you so choose. Again, you can't really splay the legs out very much, but you can get it into some unique poses, like I had mentioned, that are, good for photography, that are good for displayability or whatever. So I totally whiffed on it, and we need to get back to it. The wrists, because these are important for what they offer and what they can carry. So the wrist on one side is obviously slightly different than the other because of the weapon it is carrying it. But you have this giant ball joint, and then you have some wrist protection here with that triple tiered shoulder pad type piece that we usually see it at. But you have that can rotate in and outward. That is essentially the hand. You do have some fingers that are here. And then he is carrying this giant sword. I mean, it is absolutely massive. It is as tall as the mech if you were going to take it off and stand it up. You can take it off. It is just Technic pinned in there. But it has that new sword piece, that nice thin sword piece. And then we have some helicopter blades that go down the side of it to cover that, kind of that ugly in the middle there. It does have a blade here, a six bladed spinnable blade here, which is really nice. And then you have a kind of a red staff that comes down near the bottom of it. And then, you have a red pumpkin with a gold tassel on the bottom to give it some, just extra detail and stuff like that. So then we move to the other hand. The other hand is identical. The only difference is that this one doesn't have that giant sword in hand. You could swap it. It doesn't really matter which hand you put it in because the sword is identical inside and out. But what you do end up having on this thing is on the left side, because this is a different part of the build. So on the left side is different from the right side, just above where the knee is, because you do have some pins here, Technic pins that do have some swivel. And what happens is you are attaching these other 2 swords to it. We've seen swords on the Oni Titan mech, much smaller than this, and I pulled it out for comparison. But that had dual swords that you kind of sat in on the side. These actually pin into place, and they have a smaller blade that is used here. You have kind of like the collar of the sword, where you don't want it hitting your wrist or your hand as you are brandishing this thing in combat. So you do have that here. It is a Technic piece for there. It's kind of that egg style oval, that weird oval that is going on. Then you have some red Technic pieces that go into a cone, which go into the same adornment as the big sword at the bottom with that red pumpkin and the tassel here. Now the swords do stick upward through where just under the armpit. It's really nice, and they stick there just perfectly. I mean, it is just, I love the way it is done. It is absolutely done in a perfect manner, so that not only do you have it so that you can use it there or pull it out or whatever, it's just really sharp. So one thing that I did notice about this mech, it is not a big deal, but with that heavy sword in the right hand, it can give you more of a lean that way. It's not a bad thing. It just most definitely can impact how you display it or what you want to do with it. Again, it is completely up to you. what you want to do with your mech, how you want to display your mech. But it is a lot of fun. It is a big old mech. It is a nice little build. I say little, it is not little, but it is a nice build to be able to use and just be able to enjoy and have a lot of fun with. I think kids will really enjoy this. It's super important. And yeah, the fact that it stands on its own is always a good thing as well, even though it does have that giant sword. So Jay, we have already seen before. Same idea. He does come with his weapon with the chain weapon that he always uses. Nowhere to put that on the mech, which kind of sucks because you're like, oh, I wish I had a spot to stick this thing, but you don't. So let's move on to some of the others. Nia, we do get Nia here. Nia does come with a new weapon. It comes with that weird blade that has that kind of scooped tip where it's pointed on that upward end, where it's pointed upward, almost like a scarab. Very unique there with a golden handle. You do get your mini pixels here with the little pixel screen. I love the way these are done. I had no idea that we were going to be seeing these again, but I love it. They have a 2x2 printed tile here with that little mini face on it. Super cute to be able to get something like that as well. So then we move on to your bad guys. Your bad guys are super important for a multitude of reasons because you do need other things to be able to play with. You do need these other guys to be able to enjoy. So we have seen these before. You get two guys that have chains for the torso, exactly the same. And then you see one of the more important guys again, because he has a cape on, the same kind of cape. He is carrying a bone sword. He's got that hat that has that clipped bone in the top, the helmet. He comes with a shield as well. And then your other two that I had mentioned that have the chain torsos. I know I'm going back and forth here. One of them is carrying two bone sides, which is nice. He comes with the red hat. Same face print here for those two guys. And then you get into this other one, which is very unique. He has these flags that are sticking up out of his back. It is not something that I expected. Not at all. His shoulder pads are completely different than what we have seen before. More of like a knight style shoulder pad with that big chunky side on the one side. He has that bone axe as well. That's just what I'm going to stick with at this point in time. But he does come with this red cow head, this skull that sticks up in the rear with those flags that also have the claws that stick up as well. Not really sure what is going on here. The little flags that are there have this bone warrior kind of skeleton, kind of scary looking thing. They are on the 2x3 tiles. They are stickers. By the way. So some really cool stuff that you get here for this, some unique bad guy warriors. I am not a fan of the flag sticking off of the back of bad guys. It is definitely not my kind of enjoyment. Just because you're going to play with this thing, it's going to fall off almost immediately, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So you do get a weapon here. This weapon is a cart, believe it or not. It is a cart that has some kind of bolt shooters, if you will, but it is not like we have seen before. The build is completely different than just like pressing the back and watching this thing shoot. There is a different function to it. So the functionality of this is completely different because what you have in the front, you have a Technic brick that has a bunch of holes in it, but it slides up and down in this slot. Now, you have four of these, not bone arrows, but these four blaster type pieces, which is a Technic axle, but at the end of it, it has a receiving piece for a bar. Well, the bar is the trans neon green color. What they are doing here is sticking that into the end. It's the piece that we see for like lights on vehicles and stuff like that, like warning lights, amber lights. So those stick in there. And when they are stuck into position in this Technic brick, they are able to be fired. And every time you fire one, it drops down to the next one, until you are empty. So the mechanism that allows you to shoot is quite interesting. It has a rubber piece in there, a Technic rubber piece that is in there that is not clipped into place. It is axled into place so that it cannot move. And then you have this little plunger. You pull back and pop, 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 pop. And it's a simple design. It is a simple design, but it sends these things quite far. Now, if you don't pull it back far enough, you're not going to get this thing to shoot as far. But you do have the ability to, add in this to be able to shoot at the mech. I think it's incredible. I love the way that it is done. So you do get good stuff here. The price point, $80, I think is okay. It's 10 per part, 10 cents per part here. I think that's okay. I think that is a good point where you can, be happy with this mech, with what you're getting here. You do get that little, the old blaster cannon type cart that you have. But overall, I thought the build for the mech was extraordinary. You're seeing some different things here with the blasters on the shoulders, with that headpiece, with the giant swords, with the ability to have, your swords just in a different way. I like it. I think it's a really cool set. Obviously, if you can get it for cheaper, yes, I'm always going to say cheaper. Price, I think, is okay, though. I think it's okay. And what you're getting, a nice little building experience, I think it's well worth it. All right, before we move on any further, we are up against the ad break wall, so we will be back in a moment. So we got to move on to the last set here. It is Zane's Ice Dragon creature, and it is definitely a creature. This thing is a 2-in-1 build, which is very interesting in its own right. 71786 is the set number. It has 973 pieces and retails for a cool $100, 100 euros. Again, keeping it at that 10-cent mark per piece, which is always good for people because they, most people don't want to go super expensive. So let's go ahead and talk about the set pieces, get those out of the way because the dragon is the biggest thing, the ice dragon creature, whatever you want to call it. Let's go ahead and talk about those. So you do have some set type stuff here, set pieces, that kind of thing that is going on. You do have this one that is, I don't know if this is supposed to be like the Bone Warrior's base or whatever. If it is, it's the tiniest thing that I think I've ever seen. It comes with a little red hat that we've seen on the bad guy minifigs, some claws that are sticking out the side. You have some red brick built stanchions that are going upright. And they use the cow horns on the very top that we have seen for the little cows that come in different sets and such. Not bad. So then you do move on and you get this interesting little kind of 4-legged spider, if you will. It's got the little claws and stuff. This thing is essentially just a bolt shooter. That is it. Not the big ones, not the big rubber tipped ones, but it is a bolt shooter. You have that trans neon green color for the bolt that comes in here. You do get an extra just in case you do lose it or whatever. You can clip it into place on top, which is nice to be able to do, or you can use what that clip is as like a sight. It's kind of neat in its own right. So then let's move on to the minifigs, get those out of the way because although they're awesome, they aren't the selling point. They are not the main focus here as some of the others that we have seen. So you do get Zane. You get Zane in his garb. He has got his angry face, of course, which is important for Zane. But I love his gi because I love his colors. You have the white. You have that azure color that is in here, that lighter azure color. His golden sword, he's got the same thing that all the other ninjas are wearing where he can put his katana type sword in back of him. And then you also get a pixel, not like a pixel from, a screen. You actually get Pixel, which of course they put her in the most expensive set, but why wouldn't they? So Pixel comes with 2 different faces on the white minifig head here. She's got the nice printing that she has because she's like a robot, human droid. Anyway, she has an angry face and she's got a happy face. And then she has her silver hairpiece, which is standard for Pixel. She's got golden shoulder pads here. She doesn't have a spot for her sword. It is more of a scarab type sword. I'm glad I remembered that. So then her torso is her standard print where it's kind of like this android humanoid type body. And I love the fact that we get her. Then we move on to the baddie that we get here. Well, we get 3 of them, but this is I think this is like the king of the kings, right? He has his fabric cape. He has his bone sword, that helmet that has the clip with that bone piece on the top of it. This is the same guy that we have seen before. 1 chain down each side with the kind of like eyeball decoration down or kind of around the midsection of the torso. That bone warrior kind of metal-esque skeleton head on the very top of the torso, which is kind of unique. And then his face is obviously different than the rest because he's the bad guy. He's got that silver face on the green versus, just the red eyes and just green face. And that'd be completely done. So then we move on to the other bad guy. This guy's got all his chains again. I mean, the chains are a thing. The print, he's got that knight style, shoulder pad that we had talked about with the last one, his little axe that he's got. Then he's got the silver helmet, but it does not have a clip on it. And we move on to the other bad guy. He's got the same kind of thing we have seen before, the skeleton style belt buckle area. He's got the horned hairpiece. He's got the horned spiked section of his shoulder pads, and then he is carrying 2 bone size. So enough of the minifigs. Let's get on to the main build. So the first build that I did was the upright dragon creature. I don't have it built like that anymore. I built the actual big old ice dragon creature, but this was kind of unique in its own right because we haven't seen anything like this. First thing you notice about this is this weird dragon head sticking out the front of what is supposed to be a mech. It's super bizarre, super interesting, but really weird looking. He does have a lot of posability as far as elbows, as far as shoulders, wrists and stuff like that for carrying weapons with the swords. The thing that I loved was the chest, the way it was built up. He looks ripped. He looks absolutely ripped. Got the 6-pack abs going on in there, the big chunky thighs, the big old feet. And this thing was a blast to be able to put together. I was sad I had to tear it apart. I think I need to buy another one of these just so that I can have this built as well, just because it is a lot of fun to have separately. He does have those big old flag pieces that are in the back, which are fine. The shoulder pads are, oh no, my mech just fell. He does have the shoulder pads that are in the back, or off the shoulders, and then some horn type pieces that are sticking out the side. But that is not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the actual big old dragon that is sitting in front of me because it is absolutely massive. So this fella is a giant, huge, 6-legged dragon with massive wings. There's nothing small about this thing. And having your 2 minifigs, Zane and Pixel, by the way, if you're not familiar with Ninjago, Zane and Pixel go hand in hand and they are pretty much always together. So it did not shock me seeing them in this set. But this thing is a behemoth. So let's go ahead. We'll go from the front to the rear and try and do it as much justice as it deserves because it is a $100 set and it is okay. Let's just go. Anyway, so you have the dual molded head where you have that trans blue ice that is supposed to be Zane stuff. You have that nice, cool, really cool light blue that is going on super duper light here for the dragon, printed eyes with some scales. The big old jaw on the bottom is huge. A lot of texturing that is going on here for that. And it is hinged. It is a hinged jaw, so you can open this thing super wide. The cool thing about it is if you really, really wanted to become a gruesome individual, because there is this depression in the bottom jaw, this open area, you could put the head of a minifig in there. You could have him as if he was bitten and stuck in there, but I don't think that's that doesn't happen in Ninjago land because it's too gruesome. Anyway. So moving to the rear of this thing, you have these big old golden horns that are sticking up here. And then just behind that, you have a big fat ball joint that allows you to move the head separately from the neck, because you do have a center section here for the neck that has another big fat ball joint behind that attaches to the body. Now, because this head is so stinking heavy, it does have a bunch of posability, but it is heavy. And what the design team has done is that center section between the head and the torso, there is another one of those 2x2 plates that has the bar ball joint sticking out of it. It does collapse into the front end of the torso, which does allow you to make sure that you do have an ability to stop the neck from completely falling down, the head from completely falling down to a point where it would look absolutely stupid. So moving into the torso, you've got this big fat torso. As you lead into the shoulders, you have this light blue color throughout, this aqua color. I think it is actually aqua. It looks like sea foam to me. Not a color of sea foam, but just like it looks like sea foam to a certain degree. Anyway, you move to the shoulder joints. These things can go forward and to the rear. You can lift them up and down. They only go up so far. But you notice all the texturing with the cheese, the trans blue cheese wedge pieces. God, that was a mouthful. You see those everywhere throughout the build, but especially up here on the front, kind of giving it that scaled texture that is going on. The elbows of this thing are locked, but the joint at the ankle is on another ball joint, a big ball joint here. Big old foot. I would have preferred it to have some rubber feet. It's not like this thing moves around a lot. I would have just preferred it. But that's just a personal preference of mine. You do have the big 3 golden talons for the claws that are in the front of this thing. And then as you move towards the rear, my favorite thing about this is the extra legs, because it does help this thing stand better. We've seen some dragons before throughout the Ninjago wave where what ends up happening is you have too much weight on the front and some of the legs just collapse. They don't hold the weight of things in the front or sometimes in the rear, because just the way the length of the design is and stuff, you end up kind of having it more of a squatty type pose, which kind of sucks, to be honest. So moving towards the second pair of legs, you do end up with still a chunky torso that is going on. You do have 2 little seats up here for your 2 good guy minifigs that are important. And just behind there, we are about to talk about the scaling that runs down the ridge of this back. It is absolutely stinking gorgeous in the way that it is done. But you do have some flags that are here, the same flags that we talked about on the mech. They are obviously used here. They are the very long tiles that are here. I believe these are the 2x8s or the 2x6. I'm sorry. You have some dragon hilt heads that are up here that they're clipped into. And these are stickers, by the way. But you kind of have this kind of gold, because again, Evo idea behind this whole theme. Evo meets the dragon. I would have preferred it not being red, but I know why they did it. They just kind of kept continuity throughout. But before we do get to that second pair of legs, that middle pair of legs, you have these giant wings. You have these absolutely massive brick-built wings that are ball jointed into place, which of course they need to be because they're so stinking large. So it's 2 ball joints. You can get them in a flapping position. You can get them upward, but they are brick blocked at some point. But you can get them level with the body sticking straight out, which is nice. And then you move a little bit further out and they're clipped into place. So you can get them into a different position instead of just flat. You can kind of tilt them upward. A lot of golden sword pieces that are used here. And then we have the trans blue, the very new giant type feathered sword piece that has all this texturing to it, the thin piece. It looks incredible because it is so thin. It's not big and fat like some of the sword type trans pieces that we've seen for wings and such have been really bulky and really fat. And you don't get that here. You don't get that whatsoever. So I really like the way the wings are done here. You get 2 of those, by the way, 2 of those wing feathered type pieces on each side. So moving down the ridge of this, you have these big old aqua colored slopes that are, that the nice angling that is going on. You get a bunch of them. There's 5 of them that are built into the back, the ridge of this animal. And let's get into the legs, the second pair of legs. I've been teasing it. I've been saying it. I keep overlooking it. So the legs, they can tilt forward and backward. You can hear the click joint in there. They can splay outward, but there's really no need. You've got some nice, heavily built up area here for the major chunk of the leg. Then you have a big old ball joint again for the feet, 3 claws again on each side. And then no rubber feet, which kind of sucks, but I get it. So moving even further towards the rear, you start to slender out. You get a big old fat thing in the front and you start to slender out really, really far in the rear. Then you get to the rear legs, can be put forward, backward, can splay them out as if he's dancing, maybe. I don't know, whatever you want him to do. Nice, really build up here. A lot of bricks that went into play here to be able to build up his thigh, his knee area. Knees don't move because that would be bad. Ball joint on the foot, again, the big old fat ball joint, and then the claws, talons, whichever you would prefer to call them. This thing does have a brick lock. And when I say brick lock, what I mean is the thing can only move backwards so far before it runs into a physical stop, a brick lock, which you definitely want something like that when you have something this big so that, you're not seeing this weird sliding thing going on. So moving towards the tail, we've got a big old chunk that is going on here. And I mean a big old chunk of a tail. You got 2 big fat ball joints that are back here, and you have 2 individual sections, some texturing that is going on here for the tail to be able to maneuver it around. You can get it way out to the side. You can get it upward to a certain point before you run into that scaling around the ridge of the back. Only goes down so far because, again, it uses that hitch piece that blocks it from going way down. And then you have that big old new style sword piece. This is in gold this time, and it's really nice. It's a really nice thing to be able to display. You get the feet down. I will tell you, in some positions, depending how you get the hind legs upward, you don't need the front leg or the middle legs. They actually are elevated off the ground. You can actually at any time elevate these things off the ground because of the click joint in there. So it is completely up to you. Maybe you want him on all 6. Maybe you want him on 4. It really doesn't matter, but I like the option that it is there for play, for displayability, for a different posability idea. It's really cool. So the set as a whole, you get 2 exclusive minifigs. You get the bad guys are okay. Not anything that I really write home about, but you do get them. You do have this massive dragon. That is the focal point. I would have preferred, remember the little set piece that I talked about in the beginning? Yes, you had the bolt shooter on the little 4-legged creature, but this kind of like little, I don't even know what it's supposed to be. This entrance into like a dojo or something like that. I would have preferred not to have that, and more pieces go either to accompany the bolt shooter or make the bolt shooter something bigger. I would have preferred that, but I can't complain. So as a whole, this is going to close out the wave. This episode, there's a reason I told you we had to do one episode for these 3 sets because they are so big and they take so much time to break down and discuss and really kind of go through. The wave, I think, is solid. I think it is much better than what the original Evo wave was last year. Last year's Evo wave was not bad, but it was the beginning. There were a few vehicles in there that I thought were really solid. I think, honestly, this entire wave is much more solid than anything that we have seen so far in Evo. You could take this dragon, you could take this mech, and you could pair it with a Ninjago season. It is that good. The same could be said for the motorcycle. Nia's dragon, maybe not so much. The little mechs, they're not bad. They wouldn't pair as well. We typically get a small mech with each season of Ninjago. We've seen Lloyd small mechs for umpteen times now. But I think as a whole, the Wave is solid. I think everything is priced pretty well. The motorcycle is a little more expensive than what I would prefer it. I'd rather have it at that $40 price point. Cole's Earth Dragon, I'd prefer it at like the $30 price point, but everything else I think across the board is perfect. It's perfectly priced. I think what you are getting is more than enough. I think the last thing as a whole, I would have preferred to get a bad guy vehicle. The little cannon that we talked about was nice, but other than the mech, that's it. The little tiny mech, you don't really have anything else. You have some point shooters and stuff like that. But other than that, you're really not getting much. And I'm kind of disappointed with that as a whole. But, it's always going to be that way. Kids don't necessarily want to have the bad guys. But it is nice to be able to have the bad guys to pair with the good guys so that you can actually have a battle scene. So hopefully moving forward, that would be my only thing that I would love to see more of with the Ninjago stuff in general. Monkey Kid does a pretty good job with it. I need Ninjago to get on that level. I think that it is something that is definitely capable of happening. They just need to make it happen. So that's going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You get an extra long episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it on your drive to work or whatever you were doing, working out on the field like I was doing yesterday. We do have more things coming. We do have the entire Friends wave of 2023, which I just have not had time. So I will be bringing that to you soon. City is next up on the dock. All the City stuff is ready to go. So be watching for that, especially because these City sets I think are super solid. In comparison to what we have seen in the past, they weren't bad, but they are coming. So until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.